All right, howdy, howdy, hey guys, this is Dank Swank, the classiest cavern on the World Wide Web. This is Mr. G with Mr. J, and we're here today to talk, well, we're going to be talking about next-gen consoles, is what we're going to be talking about. And, on that subject, actually, Mr. J, if you do not mind, I would like to start off with a horrible tale about how GameStop is a terrible garbage company who sucks and should go out of business forever.
Sounds like quite a story.
Quite a hot take, really controversial, I'm sure. It's, because everybody loves GameStop so goddamn much. But
so you're basically canceling GameStop.
Yeah, I single-handedly am going to cancel GameStop. It's not going to be someone like Jim Sterling with all his, well thought out, video essay pieces. It's not going to be Game Ranks. It's not going to be Easy Allies. It's not going to be all of these really high level, high production value things. It's going to be me in my basement. That's what it's going to be. So to sum up, basically, I go in there and I figure, in order to provide you viewers watching with the best experience we can, the most up-to-date content we can, we figured, well, we had to get at least one of the new consoles. And considering how the PlayStation 5's pre-orders were a total mess, I was kind of hoping the Xbox Series X pre-orders were not going to be that way. So I go into GameStop, ask them about that. They give me a date, but they don't tell me when they're going to open the day they're going to be doing the pre-order sales for the console. So there's like, well, we're supposed to be opening at noon, but my manager might have us open at like 10. It's like, okay. It's like, when will you know that? It's like, oh, we should know it in like a week. So anyway, I come in a week later. It's like, oh, we still don't know. Then a couple days later, they do know, and they say, oh, actually, he decided to open it at 8, and there's already a dozen people who say they're going to be there starting at 5 a.m. waiting for the doors to open.
Jeez.
So yeah, and then I ask, well, how many consoles?
What is this, the mid-20s?
Yeah, well, and that's the funny thing too,
I mean.
because they, it is kind of like that. It's like an Apple launch event too, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
it's like a dozen people have already just come in and said that. So then it's like, okay, well, how many pre-orders do you have of it? And it's like, we don't know. They just throw their hands in the air. So ultimately, I set my alarm. It's like, well, hell, I guess I'm waking up at 4. So let's see if I can make it. I sleep through my alarm is what happens, and I wake up. I realize, and it's like, shit. So anyway, I end up going there a couple of days later to ask them about if they're doing any future ones. It's like, we don't know at this time. And then I asked them how many they ended up selling. So, and keep in mind, there's like a dozen people out the door that just said they're going to be there before, not including all the people who didn't voice that to GameStop employees. So I talked to them about that. It turns out they sold 6 pre-orders in total. Like, and that's all they had at that location. So they opened their doors, and like at least half of the people waiting in line for a console didn't end up getting one.
Wow.
And they must be pissed. Like, it was just so ridiculous and laughable that it's like, wow. It's like, no wonder nobody likes you. It's like, you're really not forthcoming, and it's like, I don't know. It's
such a GameStop move to do that.
Yeah, it's like all the terrible garbage stuff that people hate about loot boxes, but in real life, it's like, oh, it's a mystery when we're opening for a while, and then when we do open, it's a mystery what we're exactly going to have available to you. So, so that was fun.
It's GameStop's surprise mechanics in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's their surprise mechanics. They surprise us with a penis up our butts. And we're expected to just be A-okay with it. But yeah, it's like, and I'm not going to name names of the manager at the GameStop. I am going to write I'm going to do a Karen, and I'm going to go on like, what's the review website that everybody goes on? Oh,
Yelp.
Yeah, I'm going to Yelp. I'm going to give them like a 1 star. I'm going to bitch out the manager who kept feeding me this nonsense, and yeah. I am going to get my hair done in that speak to the manager haircut, and I'm gonna lean into this.
Yeah, nice.
And anyway, so long story short, we're still working on trying to get at least one of the new consoles so we can talk about this stuff with a little more hands-on expertise once they come out. But in the meantime, for the lead up to it, we're gonna be just running down some specs, what we know so far, with mere days to go before the consoles are set to launch. And let's just...
Is it really? I thought Don't we still have like a few weeks?
Well, I'm just taking into account that like when this is going to come out for the non-patrons is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Like once this comes out, yeah. So I mean, ultimately, it's still what is a week but a collection of days, organized into a chunk as well. Maybe we're all just days in this giant collection of years that is the highway of life. I don't know. Anyway,
that's a weird way to put it.
It is. I was trying a slightly tortured simile. I couldn't make it work. But anyway, so we got two massive, ultra powerful consoles that are coming out. Massive in every sense of the word, in terms of the power they pack, in terms of the names behind them, in terms of their just ridiculous size. They're both weirdly proportioned and big in uncomfortable ways in places. But with that in mind, I was hoping we could start out just talking about the design of these two, just these two slabs of granite that we're gonna have under our television on the counter.
I mean, if we're talking about the Xbox Series X, then yeah, that one's a slab of granite. It's basically the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Exactly.
Yeah, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I think they really they really hit the nail on the head with the design, honestly.
Yeah.
For the Xbox Series X.
It's bespoke yet practical. Like, it's simple but bold. And I apologize if I sound like I'm on Project Runway talking about some dress made out of like used condoms or something. But it does really look like it does. And yeah, it does look like the monolith. It is this massive giant slab of a thing. And if you look at the tech breakdown of it, you can see why they shaped it that way. It's designed to get it as compactly as possible while still having enough air circulation to keep it cool. And Digital Foundry did a fantastic video where they talk about that, and like where you almost lift the top of it off, lift that skyscraper sort of shell of it off, and you can see that everything's packed so tightly together. In terms of, the disk drive and the storage unit and stuff and everything, it's all just so crammed together into this thing. And it's amazing that it's not hotter than it is, because they did temperature readouts too. Yeah. And where in areas where like plugs went in and stuff, it got really hot, but there were certain areas where it actually was cool to the touch, even after running games for a long time. And, yeah, it's that, and it's apparently even quieter than the current gen machines, which is pretty amazing in of itself, because consoles used to be really loud things, fans going and everything. So it's a test.
The original PS4 just sounds like a fucking jet just taking off the runway, basically.
Yeah, and it's like that was one of the few areas where maybe the Xbox had an advantage, because it was actually somewhat quiet when it was taking NSA, like Big Brother's watching you, like video notes on you. It was at least polite about its, government surveillance state nonsense. But I mean,
it was an over glorified VHS player, basically.
I mean, it was, and it looked like one too, didn't it? Yeah. But that's the thing about the design of the Series X that's really, really cool. It's also the sort of thing where what you do for leaning it on its side, you just sort of put it on its side. Like you don't have to get a stand for it like previous gen consoles. You don't have to, it's not the sort of thing where, it won't run properly, it'll damage your discs if you do this, like the original Xbox One, where it's like you have to lean it down flat. You can have it as the tower. It's really nice. Contrast that with the xenomorph skyscraper that is the PlayStation 5. Yeah. I actually really, really like the way it looks, to be honest. Like, if you're going to have, like, a games console, like, it looks unique. Like, you look at that and you don't say to yourself, this is something that's... You don't say old VHS player when you look at it, It looks...
That's true, yeah.
It looks wild.
It does stand out.
It's like the GameCube. It's like it's out there, but that's almost a good thing. It's almost, like, symbolic of what it is, which is something to play games with. So, of course, it's going to be sort of weird and wacky and a little... although it looks like a concept sketch of a console, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I will say it does look pretty. It's just like a little too out there for me, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I'm really digging like the shape of it, and then just like the size of it is just way too big. Honestly,
it's massive. Opinion. I've got some. Yeah, I've got dimensions
Like, and
for
they
it
say,
here.
and they said in the breakdown video that, oh, the reason why the console's so big is because, we want to, make sure it's as cool as possible. But I mean, when the Xbox Series X is so compact and yet it's able to cool down the components inside,
Yeah.
probably at a much better. Well, we don't know yet if it's gonna do a better job than the PS5 at keeping things cool, but I don't know. I just feel like their justification for making the PS5 be so big and bulky is, I don't know, it's kind of weak,
Yeah.
to be honest.
I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, at the same time, though, we're talking about size, and yeah, the PlayStation 5 it's huge. It's bigger than the first generation Xbox One, and that was a massive VHS player of a console. Like, that thing was big and unwieldy. But the thing is, like, in defense of the PlayStation, it might actually do better at cooling stuff, because even like the Digital Foundry thing that I mentioned for the Xbox Series X, a lot of the areas were hot to the touch. Like, different ports for like extra storage and stuff did get hot to the touch. And, maybe the PlayStation won't have those issues because it spaced everything out. Like, they're two very different approaches to the same thing. And although the Xbox is technically more compact, the proportions are really weird. It's like half a foot wide by a foot and a foot tall. Like, it's not even though it's compact for what it has, it's still a big box, a literal big box, Whereas with the PlayStation, although it's, again, the proportions, I have them here, they're ridiculous. It's 3.25 feet tall. It's like,
Wait, what?
yeah, it's all right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's 1 and it's 1 foot and like 1 and 3 inches about tall. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
it's like, whoa. It's like a midget size, basically.
I mean, it's like they're called little people, like Mr. J.
It's like toddlers or some shit.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's still big. It's like, it's a foot and a half tall. It's a foot and a quarter tall, which makes it by far the tallest console ever made. It's, even though it's only, and the thing is, it's like, in terms of its length, like from the front of the console to the back, it's the better part. It's like 3/4 of a foot long. Like, it's huge. It's a really big box. But the thing is, and this is the thing where it might have the edge, it's only 1/4 of a foot wide, which makes it good for planting flat. And because it has like a little stand that's adjustable, where you can have it as a tower or you can have it laying on its side, which I think is really brilliant considering the weird shape that it is, that they made that standard and made it so that you could have it either way straight out of the box. It might work better for people if they just have it under their TV, because even though it's a bigger size proportionately, it's still akin to current gen machines. It's still very similar to an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, or like even an older thing like a 360 or PS3. So I can see why they did what they did, but still, it's still huge. Like, I'm still trying to.
Yeah, it's a little too big.
Yeah, I do feel more comfortable having that under my TV, though, because I don't know where I'm going to put this little PC that is the Xbox Series X.
I mean, it to be honest, like, I would see myself having the Xbox Series X fit nicely on the side of my desk, or like on the left corner, right corner of my desk.
I see.
And it's kind of like a little, well, not like, I don't know what the right term for it is, like a little set piece, or like little, I mean, it's obviously not
it fits in like a cubby hole, like a little, like
yeah. It's a nice little fixture for your desk, I feel. Whereas like on the PS5, it's like, you never know if you move your desk a little too much, it'll topple over or something. I mean, the stand will probably prevent that from happening, but it's like, I just feel like, I don't know, like the PS5's like dimensions don't really make for, I guess, good feng shui in a way. I don't know if that's the right term, but like, I don't know. It just feels like you really have to go out of your way to make some room for it. Whereas with the Xbox Series X, you can just kind of plop it down anywhere and like,
use it as a doorstop.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially.
I mean, I don't know, like in a way, yes, but at the same time, it's like proportionally, like in terms of its width, like as like like it being like just a quarter of like just 3 inches like or so wide. That's the thing. You could just have it set up like an Xbox 360, and like as long as you don't
That's
have to
true.
worry about headroom, you could just have it
Oh
set up
yeah.
next to the TV. Like that's the sort of thing
Yeah,
where I can
true.
see why PlayStation did what they did, and that's not the only
Yeah.
parallel with the 360 as we're gonna talk about, because apparently because they did that breakdown where they basically encouraged future PlayStation 5 owners, like, yeah, you get under the hood, like you pop open the side, and this is where you put your SSD, this is where you do this is where you can vacuum out any dust bunnies and stuff that happen to get into it. It's like
Oh
where you
wow.
can maintain it, as which I think is a really great move, and it suggests that, like the 360 with its changeable front faces, that you can change the weird like white labias it's got on the side of it,
Oh
like that you
god.
can that you can change it out for like different for different
Like different
faces.
designs
Yeah,
and
like you
stuff.
could have a Spider-Man themed one, or you could have one that's like a Demon Souls themed one or something.
Or yeah. I guess it allows for a lot of DIY people to like kind of customize it as well if they want to just like take them off and then just make their own art, put their own art over it, and then just kind of
Yeah, put a bunch of
yeah,
stickers
put it
on it,
back.
like my brother did
Yeah.
with my 360, which I still haven't
Oh
forgiven him
god.
for.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like that, because with the Xbox Series X, although I really like it as a console, the one thing is it's really hard to see like if something were to go wrong. Like, and I'm sure there are ways to do it, but it seems like it's difficult for a consumer to just do some fixing up themselves if things, if there's some issues, or if like it starts overheating or stuff gets into it. And granted, it's designed in such a way that won't, be an issue generally speaking. But it'd be nice if it was the sort of thing where it's like, well, yeah, you can undo this, and where it's like, oh yeah, here's use a hex screw or something to undo it. But I didn't see that in any of the tech breakdowns. Um, Again, I don't know. It's hard to know until they both come out, but I definitely want to give it to the PlayStation for allowing a little more, just a tinge more adjustability. One last thing I wanted to mention regarding this was how for the PlayStation 5, the design language that's being implemented, not just the weird sort of like, you know, like the weird sort of Martian sandwich aesthetic that it's doing, but like,
Oh god.
with two white pieces of bread and black, dark matter filling.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that it's like the disc version of it seems like it seems like the disc tray was an afterthought.
Oh
Like,
yeah, definitely.
like it's this weird bulge on the side, and it's just this black, like they don't work that into the design where like the flap for it like sort of arches around the
Mhm.
disc slit. It's like it's just
Yeah.
sort of there, just
Yeah.
sort of pops out, like sort of.
Mhm.
And like that's the thing. I feel like that's very telling. And I know I've said this before. Like for all 6 people who saw when we talked about the PlayStation 5 and its reveal on that video, how it seems very much like they're sort of angling towards like, yeah, this is a vestigial trait from consoles, and we're gonna move past it with digital. Whereas with the Xbox Series X, it seems much more like a statement. It's like, yeah, this is an integral part of it. Like it's within, it doesn't change any of the proportions at all in order to accommodate it. It lines up with the power button. Like just in terms of visual language, the Xbox looks like it's more pro disc-based media, whereas the PlayStation's like, well, I mean, this is still the one that you want out of the two of them probably, but it's like, come on. It's like, do you really need this sort of thing? It's like trying to almost manufacture a consent from the consumer that it's like, this isn't really something you want. I mean, look at it. It looks garish, I don't know. And I just, I don't know. And this is just going to my weird soapbox about like game ownership and game preservation and like disc-based media being sort of trying to pushed by the wayside with digital sales and whatnot, and digital codes and everything. But again, that might just be me projecting it in defense of Sony and PlayStation. It could have just been that the way they set it up, like that's the only way they were able to get it in while maintaining the design that they wanted. Like there was literally no other way. But I don't know. It seems a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know
You
why
know?
they didn't just have the disc slot like right in the middle of the console itself.
Yeah.
Like I feel
Well,
like if they had
yeah.
just like I don't know gone back to the drawing board a little more and they had just designed the console around just having it right smack dab in the middle
Yeah.
so that they didn't have
Oh,
to have that slab, that slit or whatever
yeah.
that makes it extra bulky. That
Yeah.
could
Because it
have,
makes sense for it to be in
yeah,
the center, doesn't it? You
yeah,
know,
yeah, it does.
although at the same time, like I look at it and I think to myself, and that's why I'm thinking like it was a designed as it was a practical sort of like engineering decision, like they had to do it because
Hmm.
like disc trays generally, like you look at even older consoles, they're usually like off to the side to some degree. Like
Oh yeah, you're
PlayStation
right.
3 and Xbox 360 hit it to some degree, but there was no doubt that it's like, yeah, this isn't like in the center of the console. I'm
Hmm.
thinking that if they were to do what they wanted to do and to make the space for like air circulation, like you were saying, so that it could keep cool, like if they were to set it up with the disc tray in the center, maybe it'd be the thing where it'd be like an even fatter box than it is. Like it would have to be like 5 inches wide or something like
Oh yeah,
ridiculous.
true.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why I'm thinking maybe in defense of this company that I've been accused by a few people of hating. A few people being some troublesome people in college who were definitely fanboys of PlayStation and
Oh
took
yeah.
every criticism as strongly as they could. That maybe it was a design thing because or maybe it wasn't just a design thing. That said, the PlayStation 5, the Slim, quote unquote, the digital only,
Yeah.
that's quite a good looking console.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
think it looks like because without the disc drive, it does look really really sort of like concept art, but really just bespoke, like something out of Star Wars almost that like you'd put a
Oh yeah.
hologram thing into. And I guess that's as good as a transition as any. We talked about the big flagship consoles. Let's talk about the digital only versions, the alternatives, that are a little bit smaller. In some
Hmm.
cases, a lot smaller, apparently.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to the Series S, I'm going to mix that up, no doubt, within this section and say Series X Mini or Series X Digital or something. Just watch out for that. Uh,
Just as
but
long as you don't call it this Xbox Series SEX. I mean, what?
I mean, I don't know. For some people, it might be because this is what they feel is the best value for money. And
Oh yeah.
to start off with, like one thing that makes them different, unlike the other two consoles, which are the same price, $500 between the Series X and the big, like granddaddy disc version of the PlayStation 5, there is a big price difference between the PlayStation 5 digital and the Series S. $400 for the PlayStation 5 digital, and it's $300 for the Series S, so $100 cheaper.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to be something that might be a deciding factor in people's decision. It's like if people are on the fence about which one I should get, that might be tip it one way or the other. I can't help
Then
but feel
again,
like.
the Series isn't as powerful though, right?
Oh no, yeah, it's a lot less powerful actually. Well, I say that like the PlayStation 5 digital is basically it's basically just the normal PlayStation 5,
Yeah, just without the
um,
disc
just
drive.
without the disc tray.
So I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like, in my opinion, the PS4 digital. I mean, sorry, the PS5
Mhm.
digital edition is more kind of a better deal because I mean you gain the same bang for your buck, like process like just in terms of graphics and processing power because you're basically getting the same thing that the
Yeah.
regular one with the disk drive has in terms of specs and whatnot. And then
Yeah.
with the Xbox Series X, it's just kind of a downgrade. And I hear that certain games aren't even going to have ray tracing with when
Yeah,
if you
there's
get the
there's going to be a
Xbox
lot of
Series S.
compromises. Yeah,
Yeah,
like lower specs. It's like a less powerful GPU,
yeah,
lower storage too, which is important to note. Like,
yeah,
and I forgot to mention this, but because in terms of just technical raw power, the Series X versus the disc edition, the hard copy edition of the PlayStation 5, the Series
yeah.
X is a front runner in terms of that. Like it's a little bit more powerful. There's a little more, just in terms of raw, just graphical power. There's more storage too. So the Series X has 802 gigabytes of usable space versus the PlayStation 5's 664 gigabytes of usable space, which is really, having that difference means it could be the difference between 2 or 3 games, being on the PlayStation. You might have to be more choosy about what you have on at one time. But then transitioning to the lower end consoles, all, ignoring the price for a moment, that I keep harping about. But it's like, yeah, like, although both are capable of ray tracing 120 frames per second at the high end and fast load times, the other machines are, the Xbox Series S is a much, it's a much more, it's a little more compromised. Like, it's going to go up to 1440p as opposed to 4K. It's going to have a lot less storage space. They haven't given out exact numbers, but people have done just rough math based upon all the other specs between like 310 gigabytes and 400 gigabytes of usable space, whereas the digital PS5 retains the same 664 gigabytes that it has on the hard copy, or the hard copy, the digital and the the digital and the disc version share the same space. So, it's yeah, I mean, like, it's you wonder, like, is it worth that extra $100 in savings?
I would say so, honestly.
You like all those compromises, like, you think, well, you're saying for the PlayStation, like, to pay that extra 100, like,
oh yeah, sorry.
yeah.
For the PlayStation, I feel like out of the Xbox Series S and the PS5 digital, it's just like I would still go for the PS5 digital, honestly.
Yeah, like the Series S.
Yeah, the ray tracing feature, like, it's such a small feature, but like, it's kind of what they're really focusing on a lot for this next gen, and I feel like I don't want to make any compromises with that, because I know that that's just gonna, like, define this generation of graphics, is just having that ray tracing. Be like making games look so much better in terms of lighting and reflections,
better reflections and everything.
So I kind of don't want to take any risk with missing out on that. If it was between, like, the Xbox Series S and getting the PS5, like, either edition, I would just go for PS5.
Yeah, but on the flip side, it's like the Series S, like, it does, besides the $100, its other advantage is that it is super, super small. It's like, just again, I couldn't, like, I tried to search up technical specs, but, like, the closest I could do was just a side by side and just trying to measure it. It's going to be approximately 10 inches tall, 2 inches wide one way, and then 6 inches wide the other. Like, it's a much smaller sort of thing. It's almost just like a really big, like, SSD, plug-in sort of thing, as opposed to a console. So, with that in mind, that's sort of why I'm thinking it's like, they're unlike the other two consoles where there's a very direct comparison. They're much more closer. This one, it's like, okay, you're definitely getting two different things, and it's like, it's almost like an older console where it's like, well, a PlayStation 2 versus a GameCube, it's like, they're very, different machines. The discs aren't even the same that go into them. And with this one, it's sort of a similar sort of thing where it's like, it's like with the $100 cheaper, like, charging $300 as opposed to $400. It's like, is it enough to justify? Like, does the Series S have a place with that in mind, considering it's smaller, more ergonomic sort of size and shape, and the fact that it's so much cheaper? Like, does it do all the other areas where, not to say corners have been cut, but, like, where compromises have been made to keep it that way? Is it worth it? For all those compromises. And I don't know, like, 'cause some people were really excited when this came out, but looking at it, I wonder, like, is this really, like, it's still quote unquote a next gen experience, but is it as next gen as it should be for the price point?
I mean, it's an entry level, like,
that's true.
It's an entry level purchase towards getting into the next gen. And if anything, it just kind of makes me feel like Microsoft just kind of has these two different models just because of that exact reason. Is like, they want to have, like, a console that's at an entry level price point where they don't have to half a grand in order to be able to experience
Yeah.
the next generation of this of graphics and whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah.
It might like for me like it just seems like the Xbox Series X is kind of the sort of thing that you would give someone like as a gift. Like say parents, if they want to
Yeah.
gift their kids the new Xbox, they'd probably go for the S as opposed to
Yeah.
the X because it's probably within their budget to get them
Yeah.
that
It's
and
a lot
over the
cheaper,
it's a lot cheaper.
but it still delivers a lot of the goods, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still going to deliver 120 frames per second, right?
Yeah, it's still 100 up to 120. It's
Yeah.
still, although it's not capable of 4K, it will be like it's still, it's 1440p, which is still a really high resolution, and that'll be upscaled to 4K, which, admittedly is not. I mean, at a certain degree, it's like the difference. How tangible is that difference? I mean, if you're like one of the Digital Foundry people looking at it side by side, yeah, but otherwise, like for most people, it might not be enough of a difference to shell out the extra 100 for, or the extra $200 for the next one, or for the higher end version. And it just seems like they both serve very different purposes, and this sort of wraps around to what I was saying about how PlayStation and Xbox might have very different visions of the future of video games, where the PlayStation 5 digital seems like the console that they wanted to make almost. Like it's like they're almost trying to transition as a collective their market towards wanting a digital thing. Whereas with the Xbox people, it's like they're not trying to do that so much. It's like, well, this is what it is, so we're just going to adapt to the market as opposed to adapting the market to us. We're going to put out a console that's like a digital one that's more casual for other people, and then for like the PC Master Race type crowd, or people who are sort of more along those lines, people who look at side by sides and where pixel count's a must. It's like we have a console just for them,
Yeah.
But they both they share enough where they're both the same console, so to speak. But it's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems like a different sort of viewpoint on like what to make and like how they're planning on like early steers on their thing. It's like PlayStation's like, okay, so we're going to make it. It's going to be like this one unit, like this one collective group that we have everybody in. And maybe it's like we're going to have some slight variance within that, but it's ultimately the same thing. And Xbox, it's just like, people want different things. And instead of sort of trying to make a singular sort of thing for all of them, we're just going to make two slightly different things so that we can have them split up a little bit.
Yeah, the analogy that comes to mind when I think of what the different approaches Xbox and PlayStation are taking is PlayStation is taking the Apple route, basically.
Yeah, it does
And
kind of
then-
seem like that, doesn't it?
And then Xbox is kind of like just taking the what the rest of the mobile phone makers or manufacturers are taking with like their
The Android
phones.
route.
The Android route, yeah.
Yeah, taking batteries out and everything.
Pretty much.
And yeah, actually, that's a good transition into the next thing that we want to talk about, which, it's like that big console is great, but if you don't have a controller, it's useless.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and next gen controllers for their consoles, the PlayStation 5, what is it, the DualShock 5, is that what they're calling it?
No, they're calling it the Dual Sense. It's
The
actually
Dual
different.
Sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's got a different name, so it's different.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's me being snarky. And then the Series X controller, which I don't think they have a funky name for that one. I think it's just the Xbox Series X controller.
Yeah. It kind of just seems like they're not really doing much with the new controller for the Xbox, right? It's
I
just
mean,
kinda
yeah,
like,
it seems like they're both pretty similar to the last one. I mean,
yeah.
it's a weird sort of like, I say that, but it's a weird sort of like where they've sort of traded places on a few things. Like, if anything, like the PlayStation 5 controller, like I noted here that it seems a little more shaped like an Xbox controller in terms of the way that like the top end tapers in a little bit, and just the way buttons are placed and everything. I like the two-tone
yeah.
on it. It does look really cool with the two-tone. Matches the console really well with the black and the
definitely.
white.
Yeah.
Looks super cool.
Yeah. Now then it
whereas
seems pretty ergonomic as well.
Yeah, it does, and I'm
Like,
guessing that's why, like, going for the Xbox 360 sort of thing, where it's like it tapers in and
yeah.
it's just a little more. The
Yeah, like they
series,
finally got
yeah.
they sorry, I just wanted to
Oh yeah.
chime in. I was chiming one more thing. Like I guess when you compare it to previous PlayStation controllers with the DualShock controllers, like I don't know about you if you ever played with the PlayStation DualShock controllers from previous generations, but
A little
I I
bit.
I, I like for me personally, I tended to kind of get like um I don't know, like they kind of got uncomfortable to use after a while.
A
To
little
put
too
it like,
small sort of
yeah,
thing.
like like a little too small. When I guess I mean my hands are small, so it wasn't too bad, but I guess they just weren't really made for like I don't know playing Western Western style games. Like most
Yeah.
first person shooters, when you play on a you know PS3 or controller, it was kind of a bad time.
Yeah.
It wasn't until they introduced like the trigger like R2 buttons, L2 and R2 buttons for the PS4 that
Yeah.
it kind of got a little better. So I
Yeah.
kind of appreciate that this dual sense controller is, really taking sort of to heart, that this controller needs to sort of adapt to, all different types of play styles, all different types of like game genres that are out there, not just like because like not everyone's gonna be playing JRPGs and
It's more
all
Western focused, this controller,
yeah,
to
yeah,
put
yeah.
it
Because
simply.
I mean even the triggers on it are like kind of more adaptive, right? Like they, for example, when you're playing like a first person shooter game,
Yeah, I have that
apparently
noted
like
here, adaptive triggers.
the triggers are gonna be like as if you're pulling an actual trigger from a weapon. It's
Like resistance and stuff
yeah, there's
to
gonna be
relative to what it's
resistance to
doing.
it, which I think that's a pretty exciting,
Yeah,
prospect.
haptic feedback is a massive draw for that controller for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And
definitely.
sort of on the subject of what you're saying about the controller being sort of small and like weirdly like proportioned for Western games, like the one game I played on was Red Dead Redemption was the one I played on the PlayStation 3.
Oh
And yeah,
god.
I was gonna say that's Western in multiple senses of the word. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I found that yeah, after a while it's like I was almost like grasping around my hands themselves to grasp the controller.
Yeah.
It was like this weird sort of. Whereas yeah, the PlayStation 4 controller, it felt super ergonomic by comparison.
Oh definitely.
And now with the new one, like being even a little bit closer to like what like the Xbox 360 sort of controller was, like admittedly like a lot more like a refined, like you said, the Apple design look to it.
Hmm.
Like I'm feeling it. Like
Oh yeah, same.
yeah. One thing I had note in my notes for it was longer battery life, which was a big I hear was an issue with PlayStation 4 controllers, that the battery life wasn't as long as people would have wanted. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know if that might have just been hearsay from the Xbox fanboys spreading their bile and propaganda, but I don't know. I just heard that
I
battery life
mean,
could sometimes be an issue.
yeah, like for the PS4 controllers, I do remember the battery life not lasting very long.
Yeah,
Like maybe 6 hours tops. Even
yeah,
sometimes even
not
less
super great.
as time went on and you used it less often.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I mean it's important to have long battery life because if you're planning to play like longer gaming sessions, you don't want to kind of stop because your battery dies, and you
yeah. I
don't
don't
want to
think you would
play.
want that.
Yeah, you don't want to play while the thing's charging either because that's just annoying. It's not
Yeah,
good for the battery either. So
yeah.
I
And
mean,
on that topic, if we're talking about like controllers, the Series X controller, like both of them, like neither of them are really all that big of a change from the previous gen in a lot of ways, but so the importances are in the subtleties, right? So like
hmm.
looking at the Series X controller, like they just like a lot of the design of the face of it, it's a lot like flatter and simpler. There's not
Oh yeah,
like cavity. There's not this like sort of indent at the top that was there anymore. It's really flat facing.
oh yeah,
The bumpers are a little more rounded just to make it just a little bit more ergonomical for some people, like super subtle. Um, the one thing though that they really changed that I really like is the D-pad. How now it's like it's not just the up, down, left, right. It's like sort of, it's almost like a compass. It's like you got north, south, east, and west, and there's like
Oh yeah.
northwest, southeast,
So it's an
which is
is it like an octagon or something like that?
yeah, kind of. It's like
Basically, it's a
because
stop sign.
it's like the D-pad. It's sort of like an in between of the D-pad from the 360 controller and the D-pad from the Elite controller. It's sort of like an in between of those. So, which is great for certain games. Like, I feel like that'll open a door for like more gameplay options where it's like click the southwest section of the D-pad, to activate this thing. Like, it'll open possibilities for more things to do, for one.
Oh, yeah.
And two, there are certain games, like, for example, from that will be like backwards compatible and stuff, like Fallout 3, for example, which is a game that's actually really good for button mapping. Where you can really set up the controller exactly how you want it, have the triggers versus the start, versus the home button do exactly what you want. And there was some mapping for different weapons that you could use, and some of them you could actually map to like that corner of the D-pad where a corner where you couldn't really use it in the original Xbox One because it doesn't have the D-pad like that. But now, certain games you'll be able to play as they would be playable, sort of a little more like on a PC. It's still running on AAA batteries though.
Oh god.
Like a toy.
Oh my god. Like seriously, that's I would have thought they would have just like learned by now that nobody wants to buy like AAA or AA batteries for their controllers. That's just
it's easy to make fun of. It's easy to make fun of. In defense, there are a lot of different
kid's toy.
No, that's the thing. It's very easy to make fun of the Fisher Price quality of that, but at the same time, and this is going to sound like a fanboy thing to say, I would actually prefer that to the PlayStation thing where it's all like locked within the console that you just have to plug into a wall, because once the controller's out on a PlayStation, you got to charge it. You got to just sit there. Whereas if you have an Xbox, an Xbox controller with the battery pack, you can just like flip out battery packs and keep going if you want to. Like, you don't have to wait on the controller as much. So like, as far as practicality, and this sort of feeds into the Apple thing, what Apple people make fun of with Android people. It's like, oh, your battery fell out of your phone. Oh, you cheap motherfucker. But it's like, I can see, like, it is still the sort of thing where you look at it's like, Jesus, that, like, it seems tacky. And it looks like, but admittedly, if you're getting like a battery pack, like a separate like pack that's a little more refined than just like, oh, I'm going to check for some Duracells under my counter. It's like, it is still a little tacky, but it makes sense from a practical standpoint, is all I'm saying.
I guess so.
One thing I wanted to mention, just design-wise, that I found kind of interesting. The PlayStation 5 controller no longer has a share button, but the Xbox Series X controller just got a share button. And I find that really interesting, how one moved away towards like, well, here's just this button you click and you can get to the share thing through the interface. And then the other one's like, well, we have a share button now. I don't know. I find it kind of interesting, but I don't know. I'm probably missing some stuff with these controllers. There's probably a lot that I'm not even talking about that I just sort of oversimplified. It's like, oh, they're the same, more or less. I don't know.
Like that seems like a weird choice to make for the PS5 controller. I mean, maybe people weren't showing as many clips on PS5. That's probably why.
Yeah, I know that Yahtzee complained about it. The guy from Zero Punctuation, he called it the annoy all your friends button when it was first talked about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. The trackpad's still there though on the PlayStation. Is it useful? Like, how are games going to use it? It didn't seem like they took much use of it last time.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it kind of feels like a waste of space, to be honest.
Yeah, like there are some things where it's like yeah, you can do it with this, but you could just as easily, and it feels better to do it on like with one of the sticks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
they're probably just trying to justify not having just that space be empty or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there are a few games where I could see it having use, like when EA comes out with Skate 4 finally. Like, players on the PlayStation 5 might have that might be the platform to play it on. Like, because if you look at the pad as like a board, and like you use your thumbs to like do the flicks of like for flip tricks and stuff, like kick flips and like impossibles and stuff. Like, I could see an advantage for that, but otherwise, I don't really know what else it could really be used for. Really, I don't know, like a clutch pedal maybe in a racing game. Like,
I don't know. Like, I know when I use the PS4 controller, like you kind of just use it as a touchpad for like when you're like typing on the keyboard. Like you just move around the cursor with your finger, with your thumb, basically, and you just kind of type that way. But I don't know.
So it's like on a laptop sort of touchpad then.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Oh. That might be enough to justify it. This again, not to fanboy or anything for Xbox Senpai or Xbox San or whatever I'm not enough of a weeaboo to know what any of these terms mean, but a real otaku. Sorry,
Xbox Senpai. Yeah, that's probably a good term. I guess.
I guess I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like PlayStation's been like, they've had the push to improve a lot. Like for a couple of generations, the controller stayed the same because like between the PlayStation 2 and 3, like they were pretty much the exact same controller. And then this new set of generations, they've been deciding, all right, let's really revamp this. Let's make it, our audience is older now. We're going to make it so that it fits better into their hands and it might fit their needs a little better. Whereas with the Xbox, I think because their demographic for the 360 was kind of the sort of casual frat boy demographic, the people were even, let's not say that they were mature, but they were technically adults. Like, it's still like the controller still fits the needs, but it's just a couple little subtle things here. It's like, okay, the triggers are going to be a slightly different shape now, and we're going to have a share button. It's kind of what,
Pretty much.
I mean, either way, they're both awesome controllers. If nothing else, the PlayStation might have the edge, if only for the fact that people have used the console they've already looted that console a lot better than the Xbox console or controller. They've looted the PlayStation 5 controller with like bikini shots and stuff.
Oh god.
So that might be that's what might be what gives it the edge, in the grand scheme of things. But I don't know if you had anything else to mention. I was just thinking about talking about games, because I mean, as much as you need a controller to play on the console, without games to play it on, like what's the point, right? Like, like what else are you gonna get a console for? Are you gonna get it as an all-in-one home entertainment system, like some sort of cretin from 2013 at E3? Fuck out of here with that, Like, anyway, I don't know. So let's go down the things they share. So there's going to be like Dirt 5, which is that rally game that's supposed to be really fun. The big highlight, it apparently runs at 120 frames per second. It's one of the early games that's going to be capable of that, and running that with like a relatively high resolution and like textures and stuff. For those of you who've seen Dirt 5 footage, that's why it looks kind of last gen, because they're trying to make it usable for 120p. It still looks good, but it just doesn't have the next gen shine that you might expect. The next one does have next gen shine, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the game that totally has gameplay in its trailer. They keep lying, Ubisoft, about their games, and it's like they wonder. It's like how I
don't even try with Assassin's Creed anymore. Like, it's always just the same crap.
I mean, they've made it more Dark Souls-y. Like, there's boss battles apparently where you dodge roll out of the way of things and like throw axes and stuff. Which is they showed that how you fight like different mythological creatures, different Viking like cryptozoological creatures, like
how original.
No, but it does look super cool though, that bit anyway. There's also like a drinking mini game that's like a bunch of QuickTime events that I'm not so stoked for. But I mean, Ubisoft, they reinvented, quote unquote, the franchise with Odyssey, and it seems like they're going along the same path for Valhalla. Admittedly with a lot better resolutions and ray tracing and all the rest of that. And it does look very pretty from the footage I've seen. But I'm not getting it. I'm not into it enough. They've abandoned all the Abstergo stuff for the most part, It's just, they're kind of just sort of like lost in figuring out where it goes. I mean, the journey along the way to figuring out where they are might be fun, so Yeah, I mean, how can you say no to Vikings, I guess, if you're really into that.
It's true.
Yeah, Watch Dogs Legion, which is totally not political, we swear honest, on the subject of Ubisoft games where they lie about the topic matter, a post-Brexit apocalypse Britain. Yeah, that's not political at all. So those are so we got 2 Ubisoft games. We got Dirt 5, and I'm missing some, but the big one that everybody's talking about would be Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
That's a massive one. It just got delayed again, by the way. Yeah, it keeps getting delayed. I mean, December 10th, I believe, is the date for that when it comes out.
Yeah, it just feels silly that they delayed it just because they're trying to make it run well on like current gen consoles, which will be last gen starting next month.
It's going to be last gen but at the same time, I in a certain way, like, I got to give credit to CD Projekt Red for doing that. Like, if this were another developer or another publishing area, they'd probably just say, fuck it, they're not paying for the new ones. They'll do they'll do what Xbox did, regarding backwards compatibility in 2013. It's like, hey, you want to play on, Xbox 360 games on your console, there's an Xbox 360 right there, it's just sort of dismissive. I'm glad they're not doing that, although they should probably treat their workers better. Because I hear that they do a lot of crunch at that company, like Naughty Dog does. They do a lot of crunch for their... And I'm hoping that the delay is partly as a result of that as well, just like to sort of decompress the amount of time. It's like, okay, if we, increase the window, like, people aren't going to have to work as much. I'm hoping that's another part of the reason.
Yeah, I mean, the game technically already went gold, so the game's basically complete. I think right now what they're trying to do is just optimize it.
Yeah, the port, basically.
Yeah, or just kind of ironing out the bugs and whatnot, because, I mean, obviously when you have a game that's going to be as expansive as Cyberpunk 2077, you're going to need to have make sure it's, like, as perfect or as close to perfection as you can, because, when you're talking about the developer of The Witcher 3, it's one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time.
Yeah,
they gotta make sure they're they gotta raise the bar even more with Cyberpunk.
Gotta make their next project even better. It really seems like the sort of game that people wished new Deus Ex games were in a lot of ways. Like, like, it's like a cool Deus Ex. It's not this nerdy philosophical Deus Ex. It's like, there's, like, robots with titties and, fast cars and stuff. I'm down. I mean, I'm down for it. I'm excited. Keanu Reeves is in it. I'm hope it's not like a. I hope it's not a Terry Crews in Crackdown 3 situation where it's like that's a desperate attempt to, like, oh, we know this game's crap. Here's a celebrity, please.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will be. I think you're right. Like, of all the developers, CD Projekt Red is probably one of the best ones. I mean, The Witcher 3 is one of the best games to come out the entire last console generation. Some people would say it is the best and one of the best games ever. I don't like to talk to those people, but I see what they mean. But we're gonna have, like, fast cars that go 0 to 103 seconds dead, according to a recent trailer that I saw for it, talking about the vehicles you can get. And Keanu Reeves is gonna have a robot arm in there. There's gonna be transformations where your face comes apart and, like, lasers come out of it.
Dude, you can customize your junk.
Oh yeah, and there's customizable genitalia. So maybe I can make my vagina look like a PlayStation 5 in it. So
Yes.
I'm excited for. I mean, I'm probably. I don't know if I'm gonna get it at launch. I say that I probably will. A lot of people are super excited for it. I mean, it's the most hyped game of the year, basically, isn't it? Like,
Oh yeah.
Sort of like Doom was in 2016. It's like, oh, this is so cool. We have to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll probably end up getting it. It's first person, which I'm down for. And future sort of robot dystopia Blade Runner, but with neon colors. Let's do it.
Yeah, buddy.
And that's the great thing. It's like either way, you can't lose when it comes to just the third party stuff. It's like they're both going to have awesome third party games. the thing that really differentiates them is going to be the first party stuff, which yeah, it's kind of weird. PlayStation's like, like the Xbox. Well, I guess I should start with the PlayStation since it actually has exclusives at launch or near launch. Spider-Man Miles Morales, which, although it's also going to be on the PlayStation 4, is going to be a big selling point for the PlayStation 5, no doubt. They're doing a remake of Demon's Souls, the original, dodge roll giant beast to death game from Software before they turned it into Dark Souls. They've got a spin-off for Little Big Planet, Sackboy, I'm forgetting what it's called. I'm just calling it Sackboy. I'm surprised they didn't call it Sackboy, considering he's the mascot behind it. It's like,
I know, right?
Mario's just called Mario.
Yeah.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog's just called Sonic the Hedgehog, Yeah. Bubsy the Bobcat. Well, we don't talk about that, but that's just called Bubsy the Bobcat. Yeah, but so there's a few things that, and it's like a lot of those games, like a new Spider-Man, yes, a new Dark Souls game, like a remake of an old one that looks really, really beautiful from the footage I've seen so far. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's most of it. There isn't really all that much that's going to be coming out close to launch.
I mean, there's also the new God of War that's coming out. I mean, that was announced recently too.
Oh, when is it coming out?
Ragnarok. It's either next year or 2022, I think. I forget.
Okay, so the thing, yeah, that still might be a ways off.
Yeah, but I guess what you could say about PS5 is that you kind of know what you're gonna get in terms of first party titles because they're so like concretely defined.
Yeah.
Well, like I guess the lineup in general for the PS5 exclusive titles is like I guess you could say that PlayStation or Sony in general, throughout its history has always, had that sort of thing where like they've always had, a slew of exclusive titles that you can only experience with when you get a PlayStation console. And I think it has to do with the fact that, obviously with its origins being in Japan, Sony, has to make these titles to cater first and foremost to a Japanese audience, and then kind of just adapts them or localizes them for, for the rest of the world, basically. So, I'm like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like what you know what you're getting with a PlayStation console. It's like you're gonna get your God of Wars, you're gonna get your Final Fantasies, you're gonna get your, Demon Souls, Dark Souls type of games,
Bloodborne, and you're gonna get third person is what you're gonna get a lot of the time too.
Oh yeah,
because they seem to really go hard on that. Like, I mean, I think all three of the games I mentioned for like what's gonna come out at or close to launch, I think they're all technically third person. Like you're all, or it's like that fixed camera angle with the Sackboy one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I did hear that the Spider-Man Miles Morales one, that's not going to be it's a standalone game, but it's not like as big of a game as the last Spider-Man. I don't know, am I getting bad info? Or,
yeah, I think that's the case. Honestly, like I'm pretty sure it kind of gives me like DLC vibes. Not
like honest. A standalone expansion sort of thing, like an Undead Nightmare or like a Blood Dragon.
Yeah, I feel like it's that sort of thing where like they weren't gonna dedicate like a whole bunch of resources to make it a full-fledged like standalone title, but it's kind of more of a like an expansion to the
current one.
Yeah, the current main title sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down for it either way. Like, hopefully they just charge the amount that it would be for like a smaller game. I do think it's a shame though, because he's the cooler Spider-Man. He's got a black and red suit. I mean, like, what more need be said? Yep. He's got a black and red suit. Actually, even though I've never played a Souls game, I was really stoked to see the intro footage, like the gameplay footage from Demon Souls, the remake.
Oh yeah. It looks really cool.
Yeah. The first big boss that you fight in the game, it's this big it's got horns on its head and 3 eyes, and it's really fat. It's called the Vanguard,
Oh
And
shit.
you look at the difference between the original 2009 release for the game and the 2020 release for the game, night and day. Like,
Oh yeah.
it looks, because Dark Souls games don't have a history of looking very graphically stunning. Like, they look a little janky in places, a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
At least like in the past, like before the, like in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 generation. But then you look at them now and it's just like, oh my goodness.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you see the way the weight transfers on the Vanguard when it like attacks. You see like the all these little gross details on it that you didn't see before. It's, if nothing else, that's going to be a fantastic graphical showcase for the console. But knowing From Software, it's going to be fantastic to play as well.
Oh definitely.
Just like breaking your own fingers, frustrating in places, but you know, that's the nature of the genre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Souls like whatever,
Yep.
whatever we're calling it this week. Anywho, so with that, going from like only a handful of exclusives to no exclusives at launch.
I mean,
The
except
series,
for. Oh wait, I was gonna say Halo, but I think that got delayed, didn't it?
it did get delayed. It's still going to be showing up relatively close, like it's early 2021.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, it's better, again, sort of along the lines of Cyberpunk. It's better it's delayed and it comes out better than just rushing it out the door and having an Assassin's Creed Unity situation where it's just janky and broken at launch,
True.
So, yeah, with that in mind, it's like they're really lacking on launch titles for this because it's just basically all the third-party stuff. And with that in mind, it's hard to be convinced that that's the place to play for a lot of people, even if it is like more technically powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Where Xbox sort of brings it back is with its talk about, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to wait a bit for like a lot of the new stuff. Like, it's gonna be maybe a couple years even before you get the next Forza Motorsport. We don't know when Gears of War 6 is coming out, like, or if it is. Like, I don't think they've discussed it. Like, they have like Gears Tactics. That's the only thing that's coming out, for one of the few things that's coming out sort of that could be called a launch title. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like, yeah, you're gonna have to wait for a couple of our first party things. Everwild's gonna be a little bit away. But with that in mind, here's the good thing about this console: you're gonna be able to play through a huge selection of games through the entirety of all Xboxes, like from the first one to the 360 to the one to this. It's going to be this epic legacy console, like the likes of which has never been seen before. Like,
Definitely.
I don't like what other console has backwards compatibility going back 4 whole generations.
Oh yeah.
Going for none. And it's yeah, that's one thing where they really have it on PlayStation in terms of the games, where it's like, yeah, like most of the PlayStation 4 games are going to be backwards compatible. But, it's but beyond that, you're not going to get PlayStation 3 or 2 or 1. And, a lot of that can be chalked up to architectural challenges, like in terms of like software architecture and getting it to work.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, if Xbox managed to do it with, on the Xbox One with the 360, down the, I don't know. It just seems like that's one area where Xbox has a definite foothold versus PlayStation, in the game space.
Oh yeah, definitely. Plus, couple that with the Game Pass, and you're getting a really good deal because, like, you don't even have to pay full price for like new launch titles anymore. If you're on Xbox and you have the Game Pass, like a lot of the newer titles that are coming out, they're gonna come out on Game Pass day one too. So it's like
pre-downloaded, just the second it turns midnight, just turn it on. Yeah. Which is really awesome. Is PlayStation is it PlayStation Access is their equivalent, right? Or am I thinking, what is their equivalent? Because they do have one.
I think it's like PlayStation Now or something
like that.
I forget. Yeah, my dad has it, but I don't know. Yeah. To be honest, it seems like kind of a waste of money.
I don't know. Who knows? It's like, what? You didn't come here to hear about facts. You came here to hear two idiots postulate about next gen consoles, and it's got 60 billion gigabytes of space, and it takes 700 years to load. Sure. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a foothold. And also, you were mentioning with me earlier about the issues about like save files, like, because Xbox, they're pretty good. It's like, yeah, you're going to be able to transfer files easy. Like, You know that just from the last generation. Like I mentioned Fallout 3 earlier, I got all my save files from this 360 transferred to my Xbox One, no problem. However, might not be the case for PlayStation, you were telling me.
Yeah, I heard it's gonna, like, if you want to transfer your PS4 save to your of a certain game to like its PS5 equivalent, like it's really up to the developer of that game to determine whether or not that they'll be able to make this the save from your PS4 like version of the game compatible with with its PS5 equivalent, which is kind of a lame thing, to be honest.
Just
like,
a little bit, yeah.
I don't know if they're doing that on purpose just to make people shell out extra cash just to buy the PS5 version, or I don't know. It just kind of seems like a scummy practice, honestly.
I mean, yeah, there was that issue with certain games, like you have to get a certain version of Control, which was a great game that came out last year. Which I think was at Crystal Dynamics, if I'm not mistaken, the Quantum Break people, right?
The Remedy.
Quantum Break. Oh, Remedy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Remedy. Yeah, the same people that made Max Payne and whatnot.
Yeah, but there was an issue where they've, and Jim Sterling talked about this on his show, they've come up with a special version of the game that's going to get a free update, or that's going to get updated for next gen, but that's the only version that's going to get an update, even though like the code otherwise is identical. Like you get the special edition of the game in order to get the next gen upgrade. You have to buy it in order to get that, and if you have the other one, well, you're not going to be able to get the upgrade, which is... I mean, that, and then so many other publishers are just pushing. It's like, yeah, you can get this version. We'll make it work on next gen, but you're going to have to pay like a stipend for it, Like you're going to have to pay $10 extra to get it to do that. And
oh, God.
That's
so
one
dumb.
thing. It is, and it's coming a lot from third parties because, well, this is one thing where, like, I feel like, again, Series X might have a slight edge. It's a very slight, and it's admittedly, like, depending on how you look at it, but Xbox has made a point of, or the people at Xbox, Phil Spencer probably said this himself at one point, but it's like, we're going to make a point of trying to make it so that if you get a game, since you're already paying the $60 for it, it's like, we're just going to have it so that you automatically get like a next-gen upgrade. Sort of like how it was between the standard Xbox One and the Xbox One X, where you get better textures and stuff, like you'd be able to download that. How they're going to try to do that for games transitioning from the Xbox One to the Xbox Series X. But then they said it's mostly for first-party stuff they're going to try. PlayStation didn't even seem to give that, though. They've been really wishy-washy. It's like, maybe we'll do it for free. Maybe we won't. It's like, will all these games get it? Like, we don't know. Like, they're kind of sort of, it's sort of like you saying about save files. It's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to play it yet. Like... It's just kind of like, it's like, well, we're like a couple of weeks away from launch. I would think you'd be able to tell us by now,
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's been the nature of the whole thing, hasn't it? We only just learned about them being the release dates not that long ago either, did we? Like, it wasn't all that long ago, so.
Yeah, they took their sweet time.
Yeah. Might cost money, might not. What are you going to do?
It's a little telling that I don't know if Sony's kind of have it all together right now, or with their, I don't know if they're gonna really be the like the quote unquote winner of the console wars this time around, to be honest.
Yeah, it really did seem like, because they've kind of just been coasting. They've kind of been resting on their laurels, so to speak, for this last generation. It's like, Microsoft fumbled the start horrifically at the very beginning, and Sony seemed almost relieved, like, oh, we didn't really have much going for this console. I mean, it was going to be better graphics and stuff, but for the most part, it's just going to play like a normal average console. And apparently that's all it needs to be. Yeah. So, like, and then Xbox has been bending over backwards trying to, like, fix that. But I feel like Sony's been able to, like, ride the goodwill from the start, from 2013 all the way up until now, which is amazing to be honest. Like, because
Yeah.
when you look at all the ways in which, in the years that fall, like in 2015, like, oh, we're going to make stuff backwards compatible, and also Fallout 4 is going to have mods on console. The first game ever to have mods on a console. Get shit-faced. Like, they were trying to really stoke people out, and then it's like, well, you don't like that? Well, we're going to make backwards compatibility work for not just 360 games, but original Xbox games too, and we're going to keep that rolling out,
Holy shit.
We're gonna torture our R&D department and our our software engineers to get this to somehow play on this machine. And all the while Sony was just like, I don't know, they've done a lot of stuff that they've been able to get away with because it's like, hey, we're Sony. It's like, no, we're not going to do mods on console. It's like, ugh, fine, enough people want it, I guess. And it's like, we're not going to make things backwards compatible, but we'll charge you money for you to get a remaster of it or whatever, if we can be asked.
We're not going to have crossplay on our multiplayer games.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? Cuphead on another console? Like, it's like, why the hell would you do that? It's like, we're only gonna... Although, in their defense, they did fold a bit on that, because Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, Nier Automata, and No Man's Skies were all once PlayStation 4 exclusives, and they've all since gone to the 360, along with Crash Bandicoot, the original exclusive for PlayStation.
Oh god,
Which I find kind of interesting. It's like, so maybe that's like sort of a tsundere thing. It's like, you're gross. All right, fine. Like, I guess I'll give in a little bit.
I mean, they are.
It's not like I like you or anything. That is, yeah, they are Japanese. But I wonder if they're doing enough, because Xbox seems to be bending over backwards to try to be very pro-consumer in a lot of ways. It's like, it's like, yeah, we're like, in terms of not just the visual language of the console, like actually being designed with the disc tray as part of it, like, stuff where I might be reading too much into it, but also in terms of stuff where it's like, yeah, it's like you can play all the way back to the start of the entire, of their legacy and play to now. Like, you can play 4 generations of Star Wars games on one console. You can go from the original Battlefront to, like, all the way to Jedi Fallen Order and whatever EA pumps out next, like, which is really cool. Whereas with, the PlayStation, it's like, okay, you're going to get Bloodborne and you're going to get the new Demon's Souls, but if you wanted to, go back to, like, sort of earlier versions, you're not going to be able to do that. If you want to play, say, Jak and Daxter or something, or one of the earlier Ratchet and Clank games, you're not really going to have access to that. Fan of the first God of War, you don't need it. It's just, I don't know. And I'm not trying to be down on it, because I don't really think you can lose either way this generation. Like, both consoles are fantastic machines and worth the money. I just wonder if PlayStation may be still trying to ride the gravy train that has, like, since left the station just recently, like, whereas Xbox, despite the fact that they were, like, within the first year and a half of it coming out, they corrected all the stuff that people hated about it. Like, they're still playing catch up, and they're still, like, bending over backwards to try to appease a group of people that's like, the PS5 is the standard. It's like, dude, it can play so many different things. It's got so much, it's got all this power, and it's like, I don't know. I wonder. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, I guess right now what they're really fighting is trying to kind of dethrone Sony as kind of like the go-to brand for video game consoles.
Yeah, which they still are despite everything. And
yeah, I mean, crazy. Yeah, worldwide, when you mention, like, consoles to someone from, like, Europe, or I don't know, maybe like someone in, like, the Middle East, or I don't know, Asia or something,
PlayStation.
The first thing that'll come to mind is PlayStation, because that's sort of just the nature of how global PlayStation is as a company and as a console. It's like,
even in the US, like, where Xbox is still, like, has a good foothold, you ask people, it's like a lot of them are going to say, the PlayStation's the one. So, yeah. And that's kind of, it is, I do think it is amazing how well they've managed to hold that despite everything that Xbox keeps doing. Although, sort of on the topic of exclusives long term, that might be changing too. Because recently, Microsoft bought ZeniMax Entertainment, who owns
yeah.
Bethesda, which means, and Phil Spencer recently said, uncharacteristically, he's usually tries to be really sort of like, oh yeah, we got all this stuff, it's going to be great, it's going to be really fun. He made like a vaguely hostile statement, which was really uncharacteristic, like saying to sort of the Sony people, oh, they're going to do fine. They don't need games like Fallout and, the Elder Scrolls. They don't need Elder Scrolls 6 and stuff like that. And it was just like, it was like, sort of mafioso almost. It's like, yeah, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. And a lot of questions like it, with that in mind, maybe some franchises that are under the Bethesda umbrella, publishing umbrella, from Fallout to to Elder Scrolls to Doom to Dishonored to Prey. And maybe like in the future, whatever games come out from there, they might be Xbox exclusives. We might have crazy. A crossover with Master Chief and Doom Guy. It might be. That's what people are saying anyway. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to do that. I think this might be their attempt, like, after trying to push for, like, hey, let's do crossplay. This might be their attempt to get Sony to play nice in certain areas. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Horizon Zero Dawn doesn't need to be exclusive. Come on, you've already got it on PC. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Like, it might be something like that, which seems, I mean, like, because as pro-consumer as Microsoft, or I'm going to say Xbox, Microsoft, but the Xbox portion that's attached to Microsoft, as pro-consumer as they have been, this seems like the sort of thing where it's like, instead of just they're bending over backwards, it's like they're starting to go like, nah, we're going to start bending over other things, if you know what I'm saying, We're going to start bending things till they hurt, and get you to say what we want. It's like they're trying to sort of like push back. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of corporate dick swaying, to put it bluntly. But, I mean, at the same time, it's the sort of thing where it's like, again, they've fallen so far. 2013, that little slip about, oh, yeah, I say little slip. It was a lot of stuff, but how they've been doing backtracking for the last, like, almost a decade since then. Of like, oh God, no, we didn't mean that. No, it's not going to record your every movement. It's not always on. We're going to make it so you can hand games to people again. We're not going to have it so that, stuff's going to be shareable. It's like they're still backtracking from that. So maybe this is the thing they need to do. It's like, hey, Bethesda's in a vulnerable place right now. So we're just going to scoop them up. We're going to flip them like a house, like on the DIY network, Fallout 5 we're going to make Fallout 5 the best thing since sliced bread. Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out. We're going to get them to work their asses off on that. We're going to have a third Doom game maybe. Like, it's like they've got the guns where it's like, hey, it's like they've got something to fall back on, sort of. So it's like, hey, we got all this, plus we're going to get a new Halo game that's coming out next year, plus we're going to do a reboot of the Forza Motorsport series, plus we're going to do another Gears, plus, it's like there's a bunch of, and plus all the games that they made back then. It's like, we're going to see if we can bump them up graphically. It's like this game that was 30 frames per second, we're going to have it run at a lock 60 on this at 4K. It's like, I'm thinking that they're really trying to ramp up so that it's like, they give Sony something to mess with. Which as much as that sounds like I'm saying pro, I got mixed feelings, man. Because I don't think that Fallout should be an exclusive, or like any of these games. Like, just because 76 sucked doesn't mean that Fallout 4 isn't great, sort of thing. It's like, just because they're in a garbage state now doesn't mean that there's an entire... Like, there's a reason Skyrim's been remade 700,000 times. It's because people, and it's not just because Todd Howard's... Yeah, been remade, remastered, and ported to a whole bunch of things. It's not just because Todd Howard wants to shove it down our throat, although that's a big reason. It's also because a lot of people like it. I mean, when they did the ultimate, like the definitive special edition for Xbox One, I went out and got it. So like that, there's an audience for this, and I don't want it. I think it would be a bummer, even though. Bethesda's games have always seemed to work better on Xbox hardware than PlayStation for some reason. Even with that in mind, and I think we're past that, but even if that were still the case, I don't think that people on PlayStation should be deprived of that. And I don't know, maybe hopefully this is like the sort of bargaining chip they're using to make it so that stuff is more like cross-platform, because it seems like Microsoft has been sort of in a weirdly contradictory move for a corporation, pushing for stuff to not be like where you have to play it on theirs, with all the PC stuff and Cuphead and Switch and whatever. But they might have to go the opposite route, and maybe this is an attempt to strong-arm PlayStation to being a little more like, maybe Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport can be on the same console, if you know what we're saying. Which, that's going to be... Again, this is all just wild speculation on my part, and, again, we're so early into... Like, we don't even have the consoles in our hands yet. And depending on if GameStop does the same bullshit it's been doing so far, I might not have it even at launch, but we'll see. At a certain point, I don't know. I think ultimately, again, either way, they're both awesome. There's some sort of iffy stuff, from either console, but overall, regardless of which way you want to play, I think people have a lot to be excited for. I'm certainly excited.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, this weird flip-flop they did, it's like the PlayStation 3 started off like the clear technical front runner, but it didn't have any games you could play on it for a while. You had to wait that out, versus the 360 that came to market, this white face thing that you could take off the front face and customize it with a bunch of exclusives, but might have rushed to market a little bit. Seems like they flip-flopped this generation. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's gonna be any red ring of death situation or anything like that, but
hopefully not.
I don't know. Again, I'm rambling. Just to put it concisely, I am both nervous. I am a little nervous, but overall, I'm much more excited and looking forward to what's going to come with next gen. And, I've PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. I think both are going to be really awesome consoles. This is going to be a battle to witness for anybody who's interested in the industry and the culture of video games.
It's just so microtransactions aren't a part of this generation.
Oh yeah, microtransactions, always online DRM, loot boxes, pay-to-win mechanics, all that, It's like, that's one thing that definitely should go. As long as that happens, I'm down for it, just to get rid of that. So yeah, I don't know. I think we hit the nail on the head. Did we miss anything? Is there anything worth missing? Worth not talking about? Should we talk about bug snacks?
Oh god, I think we'll just save that for.
We'll leave that for another day.
For another episode, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's, I think that about covers it. This has been Mr. G with Mr. J. We've been talking about the showdown between the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Yeah, and if you guys have any thoughts or questions about this, feel free to let us know in the comments. We really like to read them. I really try to go in and respond to as many of them as I can, or at least hit a like if I think it's something really cool that somebody's put out there. So yeah, feel free to comment. If you don't agree with us at all, if you think that whatever the roided out Nintendo Switch that is supposedly in the works, if that's going to be the go-to console, let us know that. If you think we're both a bunch of idiots, feel free to let us know that too. I'll probably like that comment because I actually do agree with you.
We embrace our idiocy.
Yeah, we embrace it, we go crazy and we go stupid. But yeah, and also feel free to check out our Patreon. We're going to have a link. We're going to have the web address at the end of this episode. We're also going to see if we can put the link in the description below. If it's not there, just type out what's in the end of the video, or the podcast, I should say. It's going on YouTube. It's going to be a video/podcast thing. Whatever this is, just type in whatever it is for our Patreon, depending on how much you end up becoming a patron for, which tier you go into. You can do everything from, getting access to stuff like this a week early, to being able to decide what we talk about in our episodes, what games we play in our Let's Plays, and being able to decide between which two videos we might even make first, I keep talking about doing a Skate 4 video. I talked about it in the end of our Forza Horizon 3 video. I have been writing for that, and I have been trying to figure out what we're going to talk about. So that might be a good one. Like, maybe we put up a poll and you vote on that, or like maybe you want to see an episode on Forza Horizon 5 instead. So yeah, just some stuff to think about. If you are interested, it does help us out a lot and helps to ensure that at some point in the not too distant future, not only will we be able to afford all the materials to really make this channel the best that it can be, but we can also afford to be able to do this full time and pump out as much content at as high a quality as we possibly can. So that would be appreciated if you guys could check it out. But
you want that YouTube money?
we want to secure that bag where Tom Nook give us our fucking bells. So with all that said and done, thank you guys for joining us on Dank Swank, the classiest cavern on the World Wide Web. Thanks for listening.
Stay swanky, people.
Stay swanky.